Hi, everyone can hear me? Hi guys. I work at a DDN, Data Direct Network. Actually, it's in HPC domain. And HPC, as we think about its high performance computing, it also involved distributed nodes. And here we are talking about distributed systems. So whatever the problems we face in the HPC system, those are very much like what other distributed system applications face. So obviously, all the principles are very much same. So as I was listening to all the talks today, I realized these are the systems or these are the problems I have faced in HPC as well. Like even if we take an example of consensus algorithms, where we implemented the raft algorithm our own, and we realized there are some problems there as well. Or if we take example of distributed transaction, obviously HPC also has those distributed transactions. And that's what I thought, let's give a presentation about. We always think about if we add any node to a distributed system, we are going to increase the performance by those many numbers of nodes. But I'll tell you one thing, what I have realized so far, the speed of a cluster or the speed of the distributed system or the performance is not measured by the fastest node in the cluster. It's actually defined by the slowest node in the cluster. It's very important how the application runs on any particular node. Even if, as they are communicating with the other nodes, if one application which is running on one node is very slow, and even if the other application running on other nodes, those are very fast, still the overall performance of the cluster degrades. So that's what this talk is all about. So how can we achieve the full potential of any node, particular node? Okay, so nowadays a lot of distributed systems are using the multi-core processors because of its performance improvement. Now, why at the first place, why the multi-core processors came into picture? So during 2000, 2005, so how the processor performance used to increase, they used to just keep on increasing the clock cycle of the processor. But there is obviously a limit to it. Because as you increase the clock cycles, the heat dissipation increases. And as the Jaideep talked about it in his first slide itself, that the heat increases and it can take down your whole system down. So it's very important that you just cannot keep on exponentially increase the clock frequency. There is always a limit to it. Now, according to the Moore's law, actually he was Gordon Moore. He was the co-founder of Intel. So he stated that the number of transistors on the chip will keep on increasing every 2 years. Now, if we have seen the history, it has been proven. And actually, it's not increasing by 2 years. Actually, it has been increasing every year. So millions of transistors get placed on each chip. And if you think about these transistors are so micro-sized. Nowadays, there are chips which comes with transistors of, say, 14 nanometer. Now, 1 nanometer is 1 billionth of meter. So you can, imagine the size of it. It's so tiny. And these are like, at the molecular level, if you think about it, it's like silicon molecules and carbon molecules. They are, placed such that the electricity can pass through it. Now, there are, obviously, there are challenges with reducing the size of the transistor as well. Now, it has been observed that there is a limit or a limit to the Moore's law as well. Means the Moore's law is hitting the wall. So we cannot, keep on increasing the transistors into single chip and cannot keep on decreasing the transistor size because it may happen that it's so tiny that the electricity flowing through will keep on leaking. And there are other consequences for that. So that's why we have almost hit the wall for the Moore's law. And there is obviously the other limit to the clock frequency. So we just cannot keep on increasing the clock frequency because it, it start dissipating the heat. And obviously you will have to add a lot of cooling devices to keep the temperature down for your systems or the data center. If you, think about the big data centers, they have a lot of coolers, and the cost they pay for those ACs or the coolers is quite high. So again, it boils down to the cost as well. So these are the factors. That's why the multi-core systems came into picture. Now Intel came up with this this design in 2005, around 2005. So if we look at this, so this is the Moore's law. The transistors are keep on increasing per chip as we are going forward. But the clock frequency, if you see, it stagnates here. We cannot just keep on increasing it any further. So right now, if we see the processors, those have around 4 gigabits of clock frequency, or less than that most of the time. So what is the multi-core processor architecture? This is a very basic architecture. I just wanted to, point out the components into it. It's quite more complex and have a lot of other components to it in real life as well. So a multi-core is on one chip, you will have multiple cores, multiple CPUs actually. And those will have its own local cache and shared cache. And those will be connected through the off-chip components with the bus interface. This also varies with a lot of architectures actually. There are some architectures which have just L1 as the local cache and L2 as the shared, or some architectures have 2 layers of local cache and 1 shared cache. With this, there are, there is a important factor of cache coherency which comes in picture with the multi-core processors. Now, what is cache coherency? It is the guarantee that whenever someone is reading the memory location, it always reads the up-to-date value of that. So take an example, if core 0 has written one value, say x equal to 1, and core 1 is now trying to read that value. And there's another core which is also updating that value. The operations are happening in sequence, even if. So it should give the guarantee that when core 1 reads the value, it gets the updated value of that variable. So that's how the cache coherency works. Cache coherency is implemented by different protocols, actually. There are directory-level cache coherency, or the snooping protocol is there, which involves the invalidation. So there is a protocol called modify, exclusive, share, and invalidate. That is MESI, okay? So in that, it maintains that whenever the modification happens, it keeps the record of which all cores has those values, even if those are in the shared mode. Suppose, take an example, core 0, it has written the value x equal to 1. Now core 1 is reading that value. So that value will be transferred from this local cache to the shared cache, maintained in the shared cache, of course, and then goes to the local cache of core 1. Now this value of x remains in the shared mode, okay? Now what happens, another core tries to modify that value. So in that case, everyone knows that I have that value, okay? So whenever the other modification happens, it sends the invalidate request over the bus so that the other cores invalidate that value because x has changed to 2, suppose, in that case. So that's how the invalidation protocol works in the cache coherency. And nowadays, this is like the 8-core processor. Now we have, in market, there are like really performant multi-core systems with, quite a large number of cores in the system. Okay. Now, multi-core architecture, there are two types of multi-core architectures. So one is the homogeneous cores, where all the cores are of same type. Those are generally, general processing units. And second is the heterogeneous cores. Nowadays, actually, we see that a lot of people go for heterogeneous cores because it gives you the flexibility of having the different type of cores and different types of application you can run on it. If we take an example of AI system, now AI and HPC are going hand in hand because AI needs, really performant operating processors which can compute really fast. And at the same time, they have a lot of data to process as well. So you need a really performant storage as well. So there can be applications which have different types of computation needs. So you can have different cores of different type and have them run on the single system or the single chip itself. Okay, now the advantages of multi-core processing. So performance increases, of course, because these are the individual processing units. You can actually run multiple processes simultaneously. It's not like, a lot of time you must have seen the virtual CPUs Amazon offers. Or even in the single processors, they say that your application, multiple application can run simultaneously. So I'll give you an example with this. So generally what happens in that case, suppose this is a single processor. So every core generally has multiple hardware threads, actually. And those are mapped to, of course, your software threads by your OS. So what happens, suppose one thread is running right now on the core, and it wants to access any memory address. So it has to go to L1, okay? It takes around, say, 10 to 12 clock cycles. And if it does not find it here, it has to go to the shared local cache. This is still within the processor. This is still within the processor boundary. Okay, and if the data is not found here, it has to go back to the main memory. And that can take around, like 100 clock cycle at least. So your clock cycles are getting wasted if you are just waiting for that address to come back to your local cache and the processors start executing. So what happens in case of hardware threads, another hardware thread takes over. And it runs till this thread gets the data into the local cache and starts running. So this is like a time slicing, actually, not exact concurrency or parallel programming. But it happens so fast that you don't realize it's happening sequentially. And that's how, a lot of time we confuse between actual concurrency and virtual concurrency. Okay. Another advantage is smaller distances between the cores increases the cache access speed. So of course, suppose you have an application which are running on two cores of the same processor, and in that case, they may need the values of the data which can be shared among those two threads. Okay, so in that case, the data is available within the processor itself. It does not have to go back, go to the main memory and get the data. So obviously, the performance increases because of that. Another is energy efficient. As these multi-core processors run at very low frequency. Not very low frequency, but comparatively low frequency as compared to the single core processors. So because of that, of course, your power consumption is less, and at the end, you pay less for the power. And it also reduces the heat for the cooling. It's obviously, if you look at big data centers, they have, they have a lot of multi-core processors. Obviously, the heating has to be there. Otherwise, the whole hardware maybe, crash or it won't work. Okay. Another is true concurrency, as I said. So these are two, multiple processing units. We can actually run concurrently and give you the performance benefits. Spatial and temporal isolations. So a lot of applications like safety, security applications. Now take an example of automobiles or the car and or airspace applications. In those applications, it's very important that one application do not, disturb or becomes or create the interference for the another applications. So that's where the multi-core systems, give you the flexibility because they are anyways, running on different cores. And they have their separate caches as well. So that's how the isolation is performed very well. Okay, now this was all about how the multi-core processors are good and why we should use it. But there are a lot of challenges with it as well. So concurrency issues. Parallel programming can potentially create deadlocks. So what happens whenever you're writing the application, you think about turning your application, serial application into parallel application. So with that, you have to keep in mind that as the multiple parts or multiple regions of your applications are running concurrently, it will create a lot of races or a lot of synchronization issues. If you are not taking care of those, you may end up wasting a lot of time in debugging and maybe sometimes re-architecturing your application as well. Effective load balancing. Effective load balancing, this is a very much related to your design decisions while doing the architecture for your applications. So how you want to divide the work into multiple multiple threads. So obviously you cannot just parallelize everything. It has to keep into account what the design is. And there's also a limit how much you can parallelize. Means if worst case scenario, if you're parallelizing each and every part of your code, now there is an overhead to it because you have to create the task, you have to destroy the task, you have to keep into consideration the synchronization, you have to introduce the locks. So that is again an overhead. Rather than if your application is small, it's just running a small piece of code, it always makes sense to run it sequentially because these other overheads would reduce in that case. So, okay. So effective load balancing is explained by Abdel's law. So it says that the sequential part of the execution limits the potential benefit from parallelization. Obviously, your effective load balancing or the speed of your application will be decided by the serial part of your application. So even if you are parallelizing your applications, but if a lot of code is serialized, or suppose one of the thread has performed some task and it is waiting for other thread to provide some input. So obviously, in a way, this thread completed very fast, okay? But the first thread has to wait for its task to complete and then proceed further. So obviously, these are the things which limit the parallelization as well. Dependencies. As I said, one thread must be waiting for other thread. There could be data dependencies or the resource dependencies. Another is shared resources. Caches and memory interfaces can introduce a risk of contentions. Obviously, with the shared cache or the shared memory, there, if one particular task is, utilizing X amount of resource or X amount of memory, say, and suppose another thread comes in picture which is running on another core, Now it also wants to, share the same data, and it is modifying that data. It just keeps on invalidating the data of the first thread. Now what happens? The first thread has to, invalidate data, get the data from the second thread which has modified that data, and then proceed. So obviously, in a way, it is creating the contention. And of course, difficult to debug. So I have come across a lot of situations where finding the race condition or finding the deadlocks or finding the lock issues become really a headache. If I have to give you an example, even in a case of distributed system, we see that it becomes very difficult when there are multiple nodes comes in picture. Now, this is, I'm talking about one node with having multiple threads or having multiple applications which are running, which are sharing the data or which are sharing the resources. So in that case, it becomes very difficult. So if I have to give you an example, so we were debugging a problem where there was, whenever the one application start, it used to create the connection with all the other nodes in the cluster. So this is a distributed system again, okay? And it knows that if previously any node died, so that was like the dead node, and it don't want to, create the connection with it, because creating the connection and because the connection manager may keep on, pinging for that node, but that node is dead. Means the cluster has decided to kick off that node. Now that node is no longer in use. Okay, so in that case, whenever the application start, it just make sure that the connection becomes discarded for that particular dead node. And now what happens? There is another thread which gets started at the later on, and it creates the connection because there was a node insertion possible as well. Means in that case, what was happening, that one thread was marking that node as dead, and another thread comes up and marks that thread as alive. So we have to keep into consideration such scenarios. Okay, so this is one very important critical issues with multi-core applications actually. So this is the worst case execution time analysis. There's a paper published called CAST32A, you can search for it. So actually they have, they have analyzed the multi-core systems for the safety critical applications. So safety critical application could be, as I said, the cars, which has the system for airbags actually. Now take an example, as multi-core systems, in multi-core processors, multiple threads are running. And the safety critical application has to make sure the task, which is very important, has to get triggered at the right time. Okay. Suppose the other threads are sharing the resource, sharing the CPU that time, and it's not getting the chance to run. That could be really dangerous in case of safety critical application. Now let's take an example of cars. And whenever the airbags has to pop out, it has to pop out at the same time, at the correct time, not like 5 milliseconds later or not 5 milliseconds earlier. It has to happen at the right time. Okay, but in case of multi-core processors, so these guys figured out that multi-core processor does not give guarantee that these safety critical tasks can run at the really exact time when needed. So they have described all the scenarios in this CAST32A paper. So high demand for multi-core processor in safety critical applications. So they have also proposed some possible solutions as well. What could be the possible solution you can think about is, dedicate one core for one airbag task, so that it will, keep on checking whether accident happened, then it has to, discharge the airbag. But it can, waste the resource at a really high level, because accidents don't happen that frequent. Means this event is not frequent, but it's equally important. So one solution could be, assign one core to that particular task, so that we make sure that whenever this happens, it has the CPU or it has the processing unit to run that particular test. And another is over-allocation time. So in this algorithm, what they do, suppose for ejecting the airbag and calculation whether the accident happens, suppose it takes 20 milliseconds, suppose. This is the complete operation. But checking whether the accident actually happened, it can take just 5 milliseconds, okay? So it will just quickly check whether the accident happened. If not, it can, relinquish the CPU and some other non-critical task can run on it. And obviously, the non-critical task will only run for 15 milliseconds. So we have a window in which you are actually checking whether the accident happened. And even if accident didn't happen, you have this 15 millisecond in which the non-critical task can run. So that's how you can at least use the complete capacity of the core and get the better performance as well. Okay, now let's talk about the performance improvement techniques in multi-core processors. So we, at some point of time, we must have, you all must have gone through what are the challenges in multi-threading programming or multi-processor programming. So let's see what could be the best, I would say, rules or the steps to follow if we are writing the multi-threading programming. So locality. So locality is, where your data resides. So as I had given the example of two threads which are, sharing the data. If you are writing the application in a way that you know that your data would be, you gonna run on particular core, and you want to make sure that data is available with that particular core, so that the data access would be really fast. That's when the locality principle comes in picture. So there are different APIs which are available where you can assign your task to a particular core or particular processor. So what happens in that case, if I know as a programmer or as an architect that how many threads I want to have in my application, or what are the requirements I have in my application, so I will assign my application to that particular core. And I'll make sure the data related to it will be assigned to it as well. So I can, I can have a dedicated CPUs and the data associated with it on that particular core. So that takes an advantage of having the local cache and the shared cache of the cores, and really improves the performance. So the schedule set affinity is the call, which is used generally to assign any thread to particular core or processor. NUMA-aware applications. Now, this is very important, actually. If you have your application is running on a node, and you have a requirement of reading the data from the RDMA, or having some I/O devices like NVMe drives or something like that, and the application is accessing that data very frequently, and you have set of threads for performing those operations. So generally, what architects do that, there could be pre-allocated memories. So we all know about the memory pools, right? So in that case, those pools you can assign to a particular CPU. In that case, and you know that these are the threads which are going to use those pools. So, and you assign those threads to those CPUs, so it takes the advantage of locality and improves the performance. So we have seen that there is a memory bind API as well. So you can bind some particular memory to the CPU and get really good performance. We have seen performance increased by like 20% or so. So these are very important things when you are designing your application. You should keep into mind whether your application is NUMA aware or not. So this is the NUMA architecture. This is, again, very basic stuff. So what NUMA is non-uniform memory access. So what happens, suppose this is one processor, and this can be one NUMA node, one complete, like all the cores and the shared memory, and this is another NUMA node. So what happens, suppose my task is running on one of the cores here, and it's using some data from this memory. Now, what happens, it wants the data which is not here, but on the next, on the other NUMA node. So this is the non-uniform memory access. If my data is available with me in the chip itself, it's NUMA, actually. UMA, uniform memory access, because the time to access the memory is same. But the data which I want is with another chip or another NUMA node. I have to traverse through this bus and get the data from there. So it increases the access time quite a lot. So that's how it is, it's known as non-uniform memory access. So that's why I said why it's important that your application should be NUMA aware. Suppose, take an example, you have created the application in which one of the thread is running here, and its data resides with the other NUMA node. It takes long time, or the latency increases to get that data from other NUMA node to itself. So rather, if I bind my memory to particular NUMA node and the CPU cores, in that case, the latency decreases a lot. Another improvement techniques could be avoid false sharing. So what happens? The cache, we all must be knowing about cache line, okay? So every cache has, generally with 64-bit architectures, we have 64-bit cache lines. And if your structures, whatever you have defined in your applications, those are not aligned, in that case, more latency gets added. Because while, suppose take this example of structure. So one of the variable is of 32-bit, and another, if I'm not, this is the best way I have defined, but another variable I have defined as, again, 32 itself. And suppose in this case, these are the two cores, suppose. One of the core is accessing one variable, and another core is accessing another variable. And they are modifying two different variables, but as they are not cache aligned, they may invalidate each other's copy. So that adds to the latencies of accessing the data. So it's very important while we are coding, we should keep into mind these small things. Another is data tiling or cache blocking. It improves performance, increasing the reuse of the data, and decreases the cache miss rate. So suppose you have a very big loop, so in the code, so and it's manipulating a lot of data. So what happens, as you keep on loading that data into the local cache of the cores, and as further you go in the loop, you wanted to load more data. So you are, in a way, invalidating the first data, invalidating the first cache. And later on, if you want to have that data again, access that data again, you again have to go to the shared cache if it's not there. In fact, go to the main memory. So that's a long loop. So maybe you can define your loops in a way which take advantage of having related information into the cache itself, and take advantage of it. Another could be less message passing between the threads. Now, we think that we are parallelizing the application by creating multiple threads, and we think that we will communicate the data between the threads very efficiently, but message passing can introduce a lot of latencies. So you should be very careful while designing your algorithm at what point you want to do the message passing between the threads. Another is efficient locking. So locking is very important because we are running the concurrent applications or concurrent processes. Those can share the data and manipulate the data. We have to introduce the synchronization. But your algorithm, if you design the algorithm in a way that less and less locks are needed, it's very, it improves the performance to a lot. Because while coding, we generally don't think about these things actually, performance issues. And later on, when all the application, all the coding is done and development is done, later on, we just keep on thinking that this application should give X performance, but it's not giving it because maybe our code is not placed in a way to take advantage of the hardware we are running on. Because most of the time, as an application developer, we don't think about these small things. But if we effectively use the hardware capabilities, we can achieve really good performance. Another is improve the lock granularity. Of course, it totally depends on the architecture, actually. Sometimes we may need to take a lock on a big critical sections, which is really needed. Maybe in that case, we can have some sleep lock, read-write lock, which can sleep, actually, if the resource is not available, go back to sleep, let the other thread runs on it. But if we are taking the spin lock for a really long critical section, so it's obviously going to hamper the performance because another thread running on another core is going to wait for that much of time. And it's just wasting the CPU cycles. Another is use private copy and synchronize at the end. Means your applications or the algorithm could be smart enough to have the local copies of the data structures or whatever the data you are manipulating and work on it, and at the end synchronize with the other threads you're working with. Another is non-blocking locks, if possible. These are some popular parallel programming libraries, actually, POSIX threads. I have worked with POSIX threads most of the time. I have gone over the log, Golang, Go routines as well. And other Erlang is quite famous. A lot of people use it. Facebook, I think, also uses it. OpenMP, Java concurrent threads, Python, MPI, and Scala. Yeah, that's it.
Mentioned about the NUMA node, and while writing the code, we should make sure that the thread and data should be the part of NUMA node.
Yes, yes,
right?
yeah.
But as an application developer, how can I make sure that that one, because that details get abstracted by the kernel level?
No, actually, those details are also available at the application side as well. Actually, I have worked with the POSIX library. You can get the APIs which can tell you, which can set the affinity. That is the CPU with which I can associate my thread to. So check that. It's available, application level as well, yeah.
And that means that my code is again get tightly coupled to that particular hardware.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Yes, yes. So it also creates a lot of complexities because of it as well. Because if your algorithm is not properly written and you are just, hogging the one CPU or one core for long time, and take an example, X number of threads you have assigned to one particular core. Now other cores are just sitting idle. They are not running anything, but you have just set the affinity to that particular core processor. It's not utilizing the other cores. So we have to be very sure about it. So it's actually a very difficult decision we have to take, while designing our algorithm for the applications.
Yeah, so when you're talking of cache line alignment and these kind of things, most modern compilers actually do the optimizations to do that. So is there anything that you need to do over and above that as well, or can you just leave it to the compilers nowadays?
I think actually as a C programmer, we have to take these things into consideration. I know that a lot of other languages or the compilers give you the flexibility of, doing the program the way you want it and don't have to take into consideration these factors. But I would suggest that you should, consider these factors while programming. Actually, compiler also gives some flags. You must be aware of O3, O1, O2, O3 compiler flags, right? Those are actually compiling your code and optimizing it so that a lot of things like SIMP, we say that single instruction, multiple data. So suppose there is multiple data and you want to run a single instruction on them. So compiler gives you that flexibility that, it compiles your code in a way that it takes advantage of that protocol. So it does the work to some extent actually, but at the end, a lot of work has to be done by the software engineers or the developers. If I have to say that nowadays we see the applications which are scaling to such a, they are scaling really well. Means, take an example of even mailing system like Google or these kind of, or Facebook, they must have the warehouses or data centers with thousands of nodes. And it's said that one data center is like a one computer. And it's like, and together they are working on one particular operation or one particular goal, to achieve one particular goal. So it becomes the responsibility of the software developer to take the full potential of that hardware, what it is providing. So I would say developers should also keep these things into mind. Hi.
My question is, suppose in one core I have my application affinity to particular code processor, and that code supports 2 threads in hardware.
Okay.
So is it good to have more than 2 threads in at the application level, since the hardware
Yes.
supports only 2 threads at a time?
Yeah. You can have that kind of architecture as well, because now in that case, your 2 threads, even if they are not actually running concurrently, but they are time slicing and they are making sure that your CPU cycles are not getting wasted to that extent. So it's a good idea to do that as well. Yes.
So how can I decide how many threads should be there in my program?
So you can always check the hardware specification. There are, command, ls CPU command is there, I guess, if I'm not wrong. So it will give you the information about it. There are even, Intel has some tools to give the detailed information about, how many cores you have and how much cache you have, the size of your cache, the cache alignment size, everything is provided. Even in proc/proc CPU somewhere, the path I don't remember the completely, but in /proc you get a lot of information about your CPUs.
So is there any calculation formula that we can use to decide the number of threads?
So generally it is said that you should have more threads as compared to the number of cores you have, because what happens if some thread, suppose it has ran for X amount of time, and now it has to access the memory, or it has to wait for some other input from some other thread, so it will schedule out, right? So there should be, if you have more number of threads, it will be scheduled on that core easily. Otherwise, it will just keep on waiting for that task to complete and then, continue with the execution.
So these are the factors that I need to consider, right?
Yes.
So can I do calculation? using this?
It actually depends on your algorithm, actually. It depends on your application's algorithm, how your application is, how your application algorithm is written. Suppose, take an example, as I said previously, it's also not a good idea to, just keep on parallelizing your application, because it will keep on adding the overheads of synchronization and, creating the task and destroying the task and those things. But this is totally dependent on your algorithm.
Hi.
Hi.
So you discussed about fault sharing
Yes.
not using the same cache block.
Yeah.
So to avoid fault sharing in languages that use compilers.
Yes.
But can you talk something about languages which are interpreted like Python? How in that case, how can I avoid cache fault?
Python, to be very frank, I have never used. In my life, I mostly use C programming and Bash, of course, for writing the tools and everything. But Go, I have used a little bit. but I don't have much knowledge about other programming languages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.